The blizzard had swallowed the world whole. It was the kind of cold that bit straight through bone, and the kind of wind that screamed like a warning. But even as snow whipped across his cracked boots and his coat flapped like a flag in distress, Elijah kept walking. Because turning back wasn't an option. Not when there was no back to turn to. Elijah was a wanderer, a backpacker with nothing but a weather-worn canvas bag, a dented water bottle, and a map so faded it was more memory than paper. He hadn't planned to be in the Rockies this time of year. No one sane did. But plans were a luxury he couldn't afford. He was chasing work, following rumors of a trail lodge that needed help before the season closed. It was miles away still, hidden behind trees and time, but he walked anyway. Because that's what you do when you have no home, you keep moving. By the time he saw the flicker of red, he almost mistook it for a hallucination. A smear of color in the blinding white. But it moved. And it didn't disappear. It was a car, or what was left of one. Skidded off the road, half buried in snow, front end crumpled against a tree. The door hung open. That's when he saw her. At first glance, she looked like an expensive statue, pale, motionless, carved in agony. Her legs were pinned beneath the dash, her face ghost white, lips tinged blue. Elijah's heart lurched. He rushed forward without thought, snow clinging to his knees as he dropped beside her. "Hey, hey, can you hear me?" he said, shaking her shoulder gently. Her eyelids fluttered, barely. "Help!" Her voice was cracked, dry, so faint it almost disappeared in the wind. He didn't recognize her, not that it would have mattered. To Elijah, she wasn't a heiress or a name or a headline. She was just a human being, freezing, afraid, and in pain. And he couldn't leave her. It took all his strength to pull her from the wreckage. Her leg was clearly broken, maybe worse, and every movement made her whimper in pain. But she didn't complain. She didn't scream. She just clung to consciousness, jaw clenched, breath ragged. The storm wasn't slowing. If anything, it was gaining fury. Elijah knew they wouldn't survive the night out here. So he did the only thing he could. He slung her over his back, careful and slow, wrapping her in every layer he had, even stripping his own coat, leaving just a hoodie to shield himself. Step by brutal step, he carried her through the woods, following the vague memory of a ranger's cabin he'd passed days ago. Hours blurred. Time didn't exist in the storm, only pain, and cold, and the stubborn rhythm of his feet against the snow. He collapsed once. Then again. But every time, he got up. Not for himself. For her. When they finally reached the cabin, he kicked in the door with frozen limbs, laid her down by the fireplace, and fought with shivering fingers to spark a flame. The fire took ages to catch. But it did. And when it did, warmth and light began to push back the darkness. He fed her sips of water. Tore his flannel to bandage her wounds. Cradled her through the night when she shook from fever. He never once asked who she was. And she never told him. Her name was Celeste Montgomery. She was 27. The only daughter of Edward Montgomery, CEO of Montgomery Holdings, one of the richest men in the country. Her face had graced fashion covers and business magazines, though she'd always hated both. The car crash was no accident. She'd run away. From an engagement she didn't want. From a life that never felt like hers. But here, stripped of her wealth, broken and bruised and cradled by a stranger in the dark, she felt something she hadn't in years, human. Days passed in the cabin. The storm finally lifted. And with it, the silence between them. They talked, cautiously at first, then deeply. Elijah told her of the foster homes, the jobs that vanished overnight, the loneliness of always being just the help and never the person anyone remembered. She listened, eyes soft with something more than sympathy. She told him about the cage of privilege, the way gold bars could become chains. They were from different worlds. But pain had a way of leveling people. When the rescue finally came, a search party of snowmobiles and shouting men in bright jackets, Elijah stepped back, ready to disappear into the trees. But she gripped his hand before he could. "Don't go." He looked down at her, surprised. "You don't need me anymore." "I do," she said quietly. "Not because I'm weak. Because you reminded me I'm strong." The world was waiting for her. Cameras, reporters, questions. But Celeste faced it differently now, not as a symbol, but as a survivor. And beside her, not in the shadows but right at her side, stood Elijah. She offered him money. He refused. She offered him a job. He still refused. So she offered him something else, a partnership. A project she'd dreamed of for years but never had the courage to start. A foundation, not for profits or press, but for people like him. For those invisible to the world, who quietly save others without ever asking for recognition. She named it the Ember Initiative, after the fire that saved her life. They ran it together. Traveled. Built shelters. Funded backpackers and drifters who needed a chance, not charity. Love came quietly. Not in fireworks, but in moments, like when he brushed snow from her hair, or when she read his letters aloud by firelight. It was real, slow, honest. Years later, when a journalist asked Celeste what changed her life most, the accident, the inheritance, the headlines, she smiled and said, "It was the moment a man with nothing gave me everything he had to save my life." The reporter blinked. "And what do you think he got in return?" Celeste's eyes glittered. Everything he didn't know he deserved. Sometimes, the richest people aren't the ones with money, they're the ones who give even when they have nothing left to give. And sometimes, the most beautiful stories begin in the middle of a storm, when two souls collide, not for gain, but to survive, to heal, and to remind us that kindness is the greatest wealth of all. Stay kind. Stay human.